I'm sitting here with PSISTORM, Stefan Pengwin Mott. We are here in the DreamHack board game room, and it's pretty desolate. What do you think about that, Penguin?
Apparently Settlers of Catan is a dead game.
It's the infamous dead game of the board game world, but it's still very niche because it's so high skill cap and so entertaining to watch 1v1, right?
I mean, honestly, right now it just kind of looks like the board game genre seems pretty dead, and that's coming from someone who plays RTS for a living.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Time to cash out and switch to Dota or League or whatever, right?
No. We're switching to Clash Royale.
Okay, there you go. That's a parallel. So we're at DreamHack. We're at DreamHack Montreal. PSISTORM Gaming has been all over the place this weekend with lots of ups and downs. Tell us a little bit about the team's performance overall. What were the standout moments for you guys?
So somehow, everyone who's not true, and is good, so not me, had the unique experience of having major upsets and then proceeding to not advance. Like, I don't entirely understand how Zanster 2-0's major and then loses 2-0 to Haas. Like, I don't entirely understand a universe in which that's possible. And then Jon Snow beating Euthermal and then getting knocked out, like, kind of feels bad, man.
Didn't he get knocked out by Euthermal?
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. Like, for some reason, nobody ever actually wins the rematch if they won the first time, so it's, guess that should have been expected.
That is some rough stuff, but I actually haven't seen the brackets today, so this might be a terrible faux pas I'm committing, but you guys still have some horses in the race, right? Like, True's still in there, is he?
True, of course. True's not going to get knocked out of an NA event in the group stages.
The faux pas was me asking that question at all, apparently.
Well, no, True did lose in the group stages in Jönköping, so it's not completely outside the realm of possibility.
So, what is the expectation for PSISTORM heading into this event? Were those expectations met? I mean, you talk about these big upsets happening and then kind of being left unfulfilled, but what were your expectations before the event started for all of the players on the team?
Well, it was really disappointing that neither Silky nor Jehefe made it out of their Group Stage 1 group, which, to be fair, had some questionable seeding. I don't entirely know why that group existed at all, with Jig, Nice, Silky, and Jehefe, but very disappointing that neither of them made it out of that. Overall, though, like, you can't really be too mad at the players when they play well and then get eliminated. Like, it's not like they just didn't play well. Like, if a player shows up and, like, looks like they haven't practiced, then we can be mad, right? But, like, everyone played well. Like, nobody did poorly. Pilly knocked out Drogo. Zanster knocked out Major. I'm sorry, Special. And Jon Snow beat Euthermal. Like, everyone did well. Like, all of the pro team players performed well, except for like Silky getting a little unlucky with that group. And so it's kind of hard to like knock players for that. It is disappointing to have them all go out before the bracket stages, but at the same time, that happens. Like, such is the nature of StarCraft, and it's not an unsuccessful event as long as True is still in it. And it's Montreal. Like, True could win. Like, it is not outside the realm of possibility that True wins this tournament.
So about a year ago, maybe a little longer than a year ago, maybe like mid-summer 2016, I actually interviewed you for text. It was one of my very first interviews, and at the time you had just left My Insanity and just joined PSISTORM. And he talked at the time about how PSISTORM Gaming's goals really lined up with yours because they were so StarCraft dedicated, they were so StarCraft focused, and I feel like in the past year, PSISTORM's just been like taking over. Like,
yeah,
they've been recruiting so many players and content producers, and just the reach is spidered out insanely. So what's next for PSISTORM? Have we plateaued from here, or no, you shook your head, oh my god.
Bro, we have Gumiho going into BlizzCon. Like, come on, bro.
No, but are you gonna sign more players? Are there more content producers signing on? Is there an expansion into another game, perhaps? Like, are you comfortable with the roster right now and what's happening, or are there plans to expand in more projects?
Well, it's the end of the year, so it's standard contract expiration dates. Pretty happy with like most of the people who are on contract, so I imagine that we'll be going into 2018 with effectively the same roster. Like, obviously, there's always a chance that something happens, But I don't see us picking up anybody new unless somebody leaves for some reason. So likely not going to be seeing any changes in the StarCraft roster anytime soon. So nothing like that I can really talk about. But yeah, I mean, things are just continuing to get better and better as they have. And yeah, I mean, going into BlizzCon at this point with like at this event now, Cham has been eliminated and True has made it into the round of 8. So True is effectively safe for BlizzCon. Not mathematically safe yet, but effectively safe. Unless like he loses to Nurchio and Showtime like wins the entire tournament, like then he's not safe. But other than that, he's pretty good to go. So we're going into BlizzCon with 2 players if that happens. So I mean, foreign team with 2 players in BlizzCon, not bad.
Speaking of foreign teams with kind of titanic showings and titanic players, PSISTORM is the second foreign team to lay claim to a GSL champion. The third?
Yes.
I thought the first was Splice, wasn't it?
My Insanity.
My Insanity. You're right. The third team. And obviously, True having these massive showings. For you, where you did make this big change because you were on My Insanity for such a long time and you came to PSISTORM, are you really happy with the way that the year went? You're really satisfied? Was there any concern from your stance making that big life change, moving to America the way that you did, that maybe things weren't going to pan out in such a favorable way?
Nah, I was always very confident that things would work out fine. PSISTORM gave me, or gives me, a lot of free reign to just kind of do what I want with the team, which is like not to sound like an arrogant prick, but I think I'm pretty good at what I do. So if like a team is willing to give me a lot of leeway, I feel like the team is going to be successful in StarCraft, which is good because like there was a lot of discussion about who to pick up at the beginning of the year, and like people were talking about like other Korean players, and like I really wanted Gumiho. I was pushing for Gumiho, and people were like, oh, I don't know, man, Gumiho, he's like doesn't really do well. I'm like, no, dude, I know Gumiho. He's a good guy. He's like super dedicated. He's a super nice person. He's gonna be happy to like be part of the team. He's gonna be willing to work with other people, and he's super good. Like you don't see how good he is all the time, but like he is like going to do well. And like I wasn't saying he was gonna win a GSL or anything, but I was saying like I really think he can sneak into BlizzCon in like 8th place or something at least. And so we signed Gumiho, just like stuff like that. Like, and as far as the players' performances, people are doing very well on the whole. If you look at the year as a whole, like I did a recent sort of chat with the owners about sort of like looking at each of the players' years in review. Nobody's done badly. There, like, not that many people have done exceptionally, but like everyone has just kind of done fine. And then we have Gumiho obviously going above and beyond. We have Jon Snow qualifying for 3 out of 4 events, so Jon Snow's had an excellent year as well. And then like everyone else, like Pilly's had an extremely quiet last like 6 months, but he started the year with an incredibly good performance at Katowice, and then he came second place in Austin Challenger, and like so like his year as a whole is also like pretty decent. Like even though he hasn't had the best showings in the last couple of months, Jon Snow obviously I touched on. Xanster as well, like things were a little quiet, but he did have a round of 16 run. He's come round of 32 at the other DreamHacks. Like he's doing pretty well himself. Like he's not quite getting the results, but like as we saw in this event, he beat Major. Like it's more about just like waiting for him to have that resurgence result. And like I feel like that is just a matter of time as long as he keeps practicing. So I think 2018, like maybe even Austin, maybe WESG or something like that, like we could be seeing finally like a good performance from Xanster as well. So when you look at all the players who are on contracts, like nobody's had a bad year. I mean, like, even True has undoubtedly not lived up to expectations as far as like being a former round of 4 Codesk player as the only Korean in WCS. But the minimum expectation was always to get to BlizzCon, and he's still on track to do that. And he still did come top 4 in 2 events. So like, even though he hasn't really excelled, like he still had a fine year. So when you look at the team in that sort of lens, it's like you have a couple of people with exceptional years, like specifically Gumiho and then Jon Snow doing really well, and then everyone else doing fine. Like there's nobody to bring down the overall rating of the team this year or whatever, you know. So I would say that it's been a pretty good year overall. Some of the events have been more quiet than others, but at the same time, like that's just StarCraft. Like you're not going to dominate at every event. Like no team is going to dominate at every event.
How difficult is it to have your thumb on the heartbeat of the scene in NA and EU at that lower level, at the semi-pro level, and how difficult is it to scout these maybe lesser-known players? Because there's only 4 WCS circuit events, period, this year. There's not a lot of open brackets. There's not a lot of LAN tournaments where people formally made their big name and then got these big team offers. But like you said, when you're given free reign, you do pretty well getting the good players to come on board. So what's your process like? Like, how do you keep that thumb on the heartbeat of the scene, and how difficult is it?
I don't think it's hard, really. I think it's a lot of work, but it's not that hard. Like, you talked about how there's not many LANs, and there's not that many LANs, but there's a shit ton of online cups. Like, there's Go for SC2 like 3 times a week. There's all these NA cups. There's like Corsair Cup. There's Olympic League in Korea. Like, it just takes the effort of like following a lot of games and watching a lot of games. And like, then my own personal play is like at the level of where like the up and comers who aren't quite there yet is. So like when it comes to like up and coming talent, I don't even need to scout tournaments that much when it comes to like NA, because like I'm just gonna hit them on ladder. And then if like somebody really impresses me, I'll be like, I should probably check how this person's doing in tournaments and stuff like that. So NA is super easy. NA is just like I play and like it's fine. EU is just like follow the tournaments. Again, there's like EU is really nice because NA you don't get the top pros playing the tournaments as much. EU you do. EU you have a lot more full-time gamers than NA. And NA a lot of the top players are still part-time and or living in Korea at this point, so they're not playing in the NA Cups. So Europe though, you got Nurchio, you got Snoot, you got Bly, you got Mana, you got all these people playing in online cups like at least once, maybe twice a week. And then that makes for a very, very easy environment to scout in. It's like you just like look at all of these sick players and like who's beating them nowadays? Like who's the dude who's just like, okay, I don't know who that player is, but he just knocked out like Mana and Raynor and TLO in a row. Like, okay, let's like look into that a little bit more. So like it really isn't that hard. There's not that much to it. It's just a lot of busy work and just sort of looking through a lot of tournament results and then trying to catch replays or catch games of those people to like actually analyze them. And yeah, I mean it's a lot of work, but it's not hard.
Who do you mark as the big names to be in that semi-pro category for both NA and EU? Is there anybody who you possibly could see making a rise the way that Neeb did at the beginning of Legacy of the Void?
Well, the obvious choice for EU's for 2018 is going to be Raynor. He's going to be turning 16 about halfway through next year. He will be old enough to play in WCS Valencia and in WCS Montreal. So, I mean, we already saw him make a round of 8 run last year in WCS Valencia. He's insane. He's so good. And from the NA side, if we're talking about young up-and-comers, the name that everyone is going to talk about is Future. And Future is really good. Now, Future has some mentality issues he needs to work through, like a lot of young dudes do. That's why I think Raynor is so good, is that like his mentality is just like, I've never seen a young teenager with such a good mentality. Future is like, he's an angsty teen. I love the guy, but he needs to work on his mentality. And if he can like sort out his mentality, I think he is going to do sick well next year. Like he's going to be so good, and he's already really good. Like he's already capable of beating like very good players. He'll beat Koreans in online cups like fairly, not regularly, but like repeatedly. So I think he's beaten like 4 or 5 Korean Terrans at this point, like really good ones. He's beaten Gumiho, he's beaten Alive. I think he's beaten Beyond in a game, like maybe not a match, but I think he took a game off Beyond. Like, can
you expand a little bit on the idea of the mentality? Like, what kind of mentality do you see in these young teen players that could be corrected? Can you go in depth a little bit more?
Well, you know how teenagers are. You know how young people are. They get very frustrated very easily. They're more prone to blaming things other than themselves for their losses. And I wouldn't say that Future does the latter of that too much, but like he gets demotivated fairly easily. And Jahepe deals with that too. Jahepe is another name that if he's able to sort out his mentality, he'll be super good next year. So like, I mean, that's just kind of comes with the territory of being a teenager. Like that's not a knock on these players individually at all. Like StarCraft is a game that requires to max out your potential in StarCraft, you need to be very mature because it requires a lot of self-analysis. It requires a lot of admitting, like, okay, I was bad in this game. I did this wrong. I did this wrong. I did this wrong. Like, and that's sort of the sort of like a stereotypical explanation about StarCraft, but like it really is all your fault when you lose. Like that's something that people have to deal with, and that's something that just in general it's harder for younger people to do. So it's not too surprising. Also, of course, then the other things are the standard stuff like LAN jitters and stuff, like showing up to your first major event, stuff like that. But I think overall Future has a tremendous amount of potential. Jehefe does as well. Those are two from the American scene who are just the young guys to look out for in, I'd say Raynor 2018 easily. Future Jehefe maybe more towards 2019. Future has what it takes to like do well in 2018. Jehefe has what it takes to start doing reasonably well, I think. He's the kind of guy who will really come into his own in 2019 if he keeps it up. Like really, really good stuff. Like I'm sure he could probably make a run for like round of 32 next year, but like I'm talking like deep tournament runs. Other than that, if we're talking about like players who are established who might do really well next year, the name on everybody's mind in NA is Game Time, and it has been for a while. And I actually talk a lot to Game Time. I really like Game Time, so he knows that I don't mean this as an insult. But when people started talking about Game Time being good, I actually did not think he was good at all, because he was a really like a one-trick Zerg who would have like one build for every matchup, and like every now and then he'd get pretty high on ladder, but like he wouldn't do well in tournaments, and like if you knew him you'd win. But nowadays, like he's taken those really solid mechanics that he has, and now he's just a great all-around player. He's a super, super good player, considering that he's not a full-time gamer. He's just actually, the amount of skill that he's gained in this year is insane. Because I really did not think he was good in like February, March of this year. And like now, we're talking about like 6 months later, like easily one of the best Zergs in NA. And like I have a tremendous amount of respect for his play now overall. Like he's a really, really solid player, and I think he could definitely make a run for even like a top 16, top 8 finish next year at some point. Other than that, I don't really have that much hope for super deep NA runs, because the other thing to remember is that NA doesn't dedicate as much time to as EU does. EU has a lot more full-time people willing to take a year off school. NA has a lot of part-time gamers and a lot of guys who will be happy to get round of 16, round of 32. So I think that like NA obviously has the potential to get round of 16, round of 32, and then obviously like from a SC2 perspective, Pilly, Jon Snow, like they're easily capable of going deep, but we're talking about up-and-coming guys. I wouldn't really call them up-and-coming anymore. But overall, I would say that NA is a little limited on people who can go really deep, because they just don't have as many people who are putting as much time in, which is perfectly fair, because like EU, it's more established over there. There are more organizations in that general region, and there's more lands. Like there's not like big lands, but like you get more like there's a lot more regional stuff than in certain areas of the US. Like on the East Coast, we're very lucky. We have SC2 Cup and Cheeseadelphia, but like the West Coast, they don't have anything. And like a lot of the guys who come to Cheese and SC2 Cup, they're not going to make money from that, because they're coming from so far away because they don't have lands in their area. Like Game Time, for example, like he's coming from like Michigan or something. Like Tag came to like one of the Cheeses recently. He came from California. Like he's not going to get money out of that. Like so. It's a lot harder for the NA players to dedicate the time necessary to become good enough to make those deep runs. But there's definitely some potential there, and obviously we don't know what the scene is going to look like 6 months from now. We don't know if somebody is going to just turn it on and go crazy good and potentially be that next sort of NA hope, so to speak.
You kind of touched there about 2019, and maybe in 2019, Player XYZ could do ABC. Is that how far ahead you personally are looking, or even SC2 the organization are looking? Because although 2018 WCS has been announced, we don't really know anything about 2019. Heck, they might release, like Warcraft 4 could be announced in between now and then. What is your expectation for 2019 StarCraft?
Well, obviously, from a business perspective, from a company perspective, we're not making any plans for 2019 until Blizzard announces anything. So, like, it's not like we're making investments based on 2019 or anything. That's purely me talking about the levels of certain players. Now, for our academy team, obviously, on an academy team, you don't pay the players. You give them an environment to get better on. So when we're talking about the SC2 Academy, there I am looking more towards potential preferably in 2018. But like I was talking about with Jehefe, Jehefe has the potential to start doing well in 2018. I just feel like if he's going to make deep runs, it's more likely to be in 2019. And regarding 2019, obviously we won't know for sure until Blizzard announces something. But considering that they're still coming out with new ideas like the War Chest, like even this giant patch that they're going to come out with, if they do that every year, like it's a great way to keep the game fresh for viewers. I'm not particularly worried about 2019, to be honest. We'll see. I honestly feel like, and I'm not basing this off any inside information or anything, so don't quote me on this, but
this is an interview. You will be quoted.
Yeah, I just mean like people listening to the interview shouldn't like go around being like, well, Penguin said this, so it must be true. No, but like, just like based on my observations, I would say that the StarCraft scene with Blizzard, like the Blizzard support for StarCraft, I think should be pretty safe for 2019. I think what will be very telling is whether they announce 2019 or 2019-2020 simultaneously, like they did with 2017-2018, which I'm not really confident on, depending on what... Well, I mean, we all know they're developing a new game now, so we'll see what it is. If it's another RTS, I think it would be very unlikely that we'd have 2020, but I'm not super worried about 2019. Like, everyone at Blizzard that I like talk to, work with, interact with, they are super passionate about StarCraft. They care a lot about StarCraft, and like even we saw how successful the War Chest initiative was. Like, it reached its goal in like 2 days. So I think that in and of itself is a huge message to Blizzard that it's perfectly like there are plenty of people willing to chip in and help them out for StarCraft 2 for the near future at the very least.
All right, man. Well, it was great talking to you. I really appreciate you giving me your time for this interview. I hope you enjoy the rest of the weekend, the rest of the events. If you have any shout-outs or anything that you want to make, now's the time.
Well, shout out to PSISTORM Gaming, of course. The big man himself, KJ, is here. It's his first stream hack. It's pretty sick. So shout out to our owners, KJ, Damon, and JD Archnog. Much love to them. And yeah, I mean, we have some potential sponsor news coming soon. So keep your eyes peeled.
Oh, well, I have to dig about that.
Nope.
Potential sponsor news.
Well, I can't give you any news, otherwise I would have said more.
Oh, but this could be an exclusive reveal.
No.
Please?
No.
Okay, well, I retract my thanks for your time.